Well, before we go to the Dominic Cummings bits, let's just talk to Niall Dickson, Chief Executive of the NHS Confederation, which represents health and care providers. We got a little bit blasé about some of these numbers on PPE because we found out that every little plastic glove was counted as one item, even, more than the pair. But 2 billion, do we feel that we have got on top of the PPE problem now, Neil?
Yes, I think billions. I can understand why the health secretary is, pleased that we're doing this. Billions don't mean anything, I think, to patients or people who are listening or anything else. The fact is, you need to produce very large amounts of this stuff, and it is also fair to say that on the ground among our members, there's much less concern that there was. I'm not saying everything is cracked. The care home area still remains difficult. Even getting kind of sight of it, exactly what's going on, I think has been a struggle. But we are in a better place generally. I think the ambition, and I think it's the right one, is to try and build a domestic supply here. Not that we would supply everything that we need, but we found ourselves in a position where we were getting all our stuff essentially from one place, which was China, not the best place, because of course it shut down. So that's the first problem. And secondly, we didn't really have a domestic industry at all, which we could kind of hype up in the event that we were being hit. So I think the strategy of going for not just China, but China, continuing to do China, because they will always produce it a lot cheaper than we can, some other areas of the world, and then building up a domestic supply, perhaps up to even 20% of what we need, but then that could be hyped up and expanded much more easily than if you're starting from scratch, which is what the government found itself having to do.
Are we building up reserves again, just in case there is a second wave? Are we now beginning to stock up?
Well, that's exactly what they are doing. So they're attempting. We had this reasonable size of stock as we thought it, which was primarily collected for a slightly different kind of pandemic, for a flu-based pandemic. And some of that was, there'll be questions over how much of it was ready and what sort of form it was in. So I think, first of all, getting those stocks built back up again is important, but also getting the right distribution system, which has been a real headache. Beyond hospitals on the whole are much easier to deal with their pallets that come out of lorries and their big amounts of stuff that you deliver. But once you get down to care homes or GP practices or even community teams, it can be more difficult. And setting up that system and getting that distribution right is still a work in progress, I believe.
How about the test, trace and isolate system? We really want this up, ready as lockdown eases, so that every tiny little outbreak can be suppressed very quickly without it spreading too far. Are you feeling confident on this? I know last week you said it's all very late and you think it still can be done, but where are you now on that?
Well, I think what we said last week was we desperately urged the government, and you heard, I'm very pleased to hear the health secretary say, which they were not saying a few weeks ago, that the local element of this is absolutely critical. And they are saying that now, and they have now met with local authority leaders. They're linking up with directors of public health, and there's an absolute recognition that things like the app are important, but are actually not the key thing that will make this work or not. What is essential is, of course, you have a national system, you have ways in which you can transfer information around, you have easy access for people to on the phones, but you need this local, rather old-fashioned, as it were, contact tracing at local level. And what he was announcing today, or making clear today, is that those local teams will be essential to identify outbreaks, and indeed, he said today, they could even enforce lockdown in an area where that was happening.
Niall Dickson.